Thanks, Nancy.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm Jeff DuVall. I'm the Director for the Department of Emergency Management. And before I get started, I just really want to give a big, huge round of applause and thanks to Dr. Brown, to Gisela, and to Daisy for the work that they do in and out with you, with our community, preparing our community and getting our community ready each and every day. It is... I don't even have the words to describe every time I see them out in the community. I get my reports and stuff from Nancy of what's going on and the impacts that we're making in the community. And I share that with you because you are our biggest force multiplier at the end of the day. It is time for us to sit together, look with our communities, and look at how we prepare and how we prepare better, because the disasters today and the emergencies, they're not lightening up. So with that, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors of the County of Sonoma and the Chair, Linda Hopkins, and also Christina Rivera, the County Executive, thank you and welcome today. I just want to say that disasters and emergencies, and we've seen this here in Sonoma County over the last couple of years, they're not what they were 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. They're much more cascading, and they're much more damaging, and there's a lot more fallout that comes from them. We've seen that now with our winter storms. We've seen that with our summers. The heat comes early. The green in the next 30 to 60 days is going to turn to brown. Fire season is here. Winter starts early. Summer starts early. All these different cascading effects that these events have on our community are not what we had before. And it's because of groups like this, working with our communities, working within our neighborhoods, building that culture of preparedness down on the bottom grassroots level is what is needed. This is how we will make it through the disasters and the emergencies of today and 5 and 10 years down the road. I want you to think about a couple numbers really quick. 500,000 people call Sonoma County home. But on the county government workforce, just a little over 4,000 people. So when that day comes, that big earthquake that we've all been talking about, and it's coming, the earthquake is coming. We can't be everywhere. But the work that you're doing today, the conversations that you'll have in this room today and that you take back to your communities and to your neighborhoods and your blocks, is setting up the foundation of resiliency and success, whether it's an earthquake, a fire, a flood, a power outage, or the many other things that could strike Sonoma County. So just thank you very much for coming out today and spending your Saturday with us. I appreciate each and everything that you do in your communities and how we work to prepare our communities even further. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Ellen, there you are. Next up, we have Alan Barnett, who is going to help us imagine.
Thank you, Nancy, and I'm honored to be here. So this will take about a minute, and it's an exercise to help us all get here. So I invite you to take a breath and bring yourself to this moment. And think for a moment, what matters most to you in your life? What matters most to you? And I'll be quiet for a minute. Notice how you feel in your body when you're thinking about that, what matters most. And make a connection between that feeling and why you showed up today for this meeting. whatever connection that is for you. And notice that connection feeling between what matters most and why you showed up. And if there's any shift, a tiny little shift in how you walked into the room and how you make that connection, that's commitment. That's motivation. That's going back and having the conversations with your friends and family. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Now that we're properly ready, I think, whoa, that's terrible. I'm sorry. I think it's very important that we spend time knowing each other. One of my goals is always to grow everybody's network, because the way we get through that earthquake that Jeff was talking about is together. That we know people that have things, that can help us do things, that can solve our problems with us. And so what we'd like to do now is have you all introduce yourself. So first of all, introduce who you are and where you're from. And then second of all, tell us what you're most excited about for 2025. So we are going to take time to hear from everybody. And I'll start right here.
But you have to wait for Ian. My name is Kate Davis-Chabelle. I live in the same neighborhood as Ann and Sue. And I realized that I know my neighbors, but we're all operating as individual families. And I'd like to be the catalyst for creating more of a community where we are helping each other as needed. So thank you.
I'm Ann DuVall, and I live in Sue's. We're neighbors, Bennett Valley HOA. I've kind of spent the last 3 years just going to webinars and being introduced through Nancy to other organizations, Neighbors Helping Neighbors, and COPE groups. So I've been sharing that information with our neighbors, but we're not at the point where we're organized. So I'm hoping that we can really move forward this year in 25, and I'm hoping that I know that I'll learn a lot from you all. So thank you for your work so far. Bye-bye.
Good morning. I'm Lynn Garrick. I'm also from the Upper Mark West watershed, which is a little bit north of Rincon Valley, and we touch with Napa County. So I'm part of the Firewise community up there. Karen mentioned we have about 200 homes, maybe 500 residents, but our footprint is about 12,000 acres. So it's a challenge to get to see everyone. I think we found that we have a social organization, we have an environmental advocacy organization, and we have our Firewise Council. So we try to have something for everybody and get together those groups at least a couple times a year. We found that wine, food, and beer is our biggest attractant. So at our summer potluck, we might have 90 people. At our social gathering that we just had, our chili cook-off, we had, I think, 65 people. So from the, sparsity of our community, we feel like we're doing pretty well, but of course want to get more. What I'm most excited about for 2025 is we will finish up in 2025 our third shaded fuel break. So that will clear the access routes north and south through our watershed and east and west. And that was our goal back in 2018. And it's exciting to see that finally come to fruition. And then we have a big community meeting coming in May where we will set our objectives for the next 3 years and what kind of funding do we need to look for and what does the community want to see us work on next.
Excuse me. My name's Dana Eaton. I live on Fitch Mountain in Healdsburg, and I've been part of COPE since Priscilla started it many years ago. 13? What? 2015. So I've been our neighborhood COPE coordinator since then. So there's been the Tubbs fire, the Kincaid fire, there have been floods. And during the Kincaid fire, I was in Hawaii, and I did all my coordination from Hawaii. And in my neighborhood at the time, I had 4 I'll say senior citizens. One had Alzheimer's, one had cancer. There were 4 of them. Another family had health issues, and I had to I could not rest until I knew they were off the mountain. Fortunately, I had their emergency contact information, so I was able to call. If I wasn't able to reach them by email or phone, I called their emergency contact person to make sure they could get off the mountain. And I didn't leave my condo until mid-afternoon when the last person was evacuated. And I was since then, and it makes me nervous just talking about it. There's been a lot of turnover in our neighborhood, and when the house across the street, we had the woman who owned it moved out. Eventually, a young couple moved in. Boy, did I take a hold of them. And they are now both involved on Fitch Mountain, and I have a co-coordinator. And what we're working on now is developing muscle memory for evacuation. Last year, we had a practice 5-minute evacuation, being prepared to leave your house in 5 minutes with your go bag, your vehicle half to full with either electricity or gas, and having your car pointing out, and then putting your evacuation tag on your house. We're going to have another practice in April, and we're working on that. And I will say, this is personal. My son lived down in Pacific Palisades, and he lost his house. Thank you. But I asked him to work with me to develop a presentation that we could send out to everyone on the mountain about the process and the timing that he went through on January 7th when the fire started. And he sent that to me yesterday. And every time I look at that, I go through it, I get chills. And then today he sent me a bit more, and we're going to develop that so we can share that with other COPE leaders on the mountain. They can share it with their neighbors. So if they don't participate in our evacuation practice, they can look at what my son went through and how little time he had to prepare, and realize I'll say this, he knew what a go bag was. I give myself credit for that.
So I'd like to introduce Skip Jirrels, who is going to talk about the Meet Your Neighborhood program. Skip. Right there.
Okay. So those of you that know me know that I don't normally deal with notes. I sort of just ad-lib almost everything. So this too is something new for me. So I'm going to try to move through this, though, in a way that actually works for Nancy and works for the people that put this on, which I'm very grateful to Nancy at DEM for the opportunity. And I got to tell you, I am very impressed by all the various things that were said by all of you. This is really, really impressive. It actually changes a little bit of what I wanted to do in the beginning. So this is a group that happens to be in my neighborhood, and some people here are from this neighborhood, which is the Witter Ranch neighborhood. And we came together recently. Is that better? We came together recently because of root beer and ice cream. Okay, that was mentioned, that having something like that is really helpful. I got to tell you, vanilla ice cream really does it. You know, a little bit of root beer, some vanilla ice cream. This represents 40 people, roughly 40 people. I think there might have been a little bit more, or something close to 40 people. And we're going to circle back to this and bring Witter Ranch neighborhood back. But I just want you to know that this is a group of people that are really trying, and they've been trying for some time. And they were actually working together before the Meet Your Neighbors program came into the neighborhood. Mike Baldus and others, they were already doing things within their neighborhood, but they've really taken on trying to deal with emergency preparedness. And so essentially what I put together were comments from the neighbors out in the West County. And what I heard here really is, I mean, I could almost just say we should repeat the things that you all said, because that's going to be some of what is brought up here. But I'm going to go through this process anyway. So this is a group of people that are coming together at Sebastopol Fire Department, and they're within the evacuation zone 1. So this is a variety of leaders that stretched across one of the evacuation zones in Sebastopol. But these are just, some of the people that come together out in West County that are trying to do the same things that you all are doing. It's the same exact kind of work. But what I asked them to do, what Nancy had asked for, was what are the best practices? So I asked for that. I got quite a few responses, and what I've done is tried to break that down. And what I'm going to do is just put some slides up that have the comments. And actually, some of the slides I'm going to put up, the people that sent them in are actually here. So if it seems like it's appropriate for those people to step forward and make some comments, maybe we could let them do that. There might be enough time. But again, those of you that don't know me, I have a little bit of a reputation for embellishing. So if I stray a lot, those of you that are out there in the neighborhoods, if I stray too far from what you had intended, we can maybe make time for you. Otherwise, I'll do that embellishing part. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw some slides up, and it's going to have some comments. And then what I'm going to do is sort of pick what I think are some of the more important pieces in there. So this is Juanita Court. This is in town in Sebastopol. I think you already heard from the person that actually sent this in. So important pieces of this. Second Friday of every month, drinks and appetizers. One of the things that I think is really important about this is 5 households where they rotate across the neighborhood. Okay, they rotate households. This is a neighborhood that's actually learned something, and that learning is actually a part of what's in this. It took them a year to move from just simply meeting outside. And why is it easy to meet outside? Because we're all outside. We're not in my house. I'm not in your house. It's actually pretty simple, right? So it took them a year to move inside. I think that's really a significant thing for all of us to understand. This thing takes time. It's not a simple process. It doesn't happen right away. It takes time. And they actually sort of reflect that. When they wanted to move inside, it took a month or so for the second house to step forward and say that, okay, we could go into my house next time, but look at the number that they have now. They have 5 households now. It takes time. This idea that we're talking about, and you've all sort of mentioned it, it's been mentioned, it takes time. It takes champions, and it takes time. And you should, I hope that you'll know that it's actually okay that it takes time, and give it the time. What little bit that you might put in, the next person's going to put a little bit in, and the next person's going to put a little bit in, and the next person's going to put a little bit in, and the next thing you know, you might be in a situation like Harrison Grade. Okay, Harrison Grade is in the rural area, and actually they cover a very large area, much like some of the Fire Safe or FireWise groups. They cover a pretty large area. Okay. So I'm going to give you some of the things that I think are important. Soup Sundays. That's great, right? They named it. They named what I'm going to start to walk around. I can't hardly help it. Tapas Tuesdays, okay? They name what they do. Think about that for yourselves if you're not doing that. Think about the fact that naming what you do gives an identity to it. Okay, that's really important. And these are neighborhoods that have been doing things for a long time. They found out that it was important to name it. They found out that it was important to have an identity. Okay, that's really important, I think, for everybody to know. Check out the other thing, a traveling suitcase. I mean, who does that? I mean, nobody, right? I mean, a traveling suitcase with everything that you might need. Hopefully it's been cleaned, right? I mean, you want it to be cleaned. Hopefully that's a big part of it. But they have a traveling suitcase just because it makes it easier. Okay, this is a learning from a group over a long period of time. Okay, Willow High Burnett, 3 streets in town near the post office. Their neighborhood's been organized for quite some time, since 2010. They get together, they gather and get acquainted with the small side of emergency preparedness. Think about that. Not a main dish. It's not the main reason. What they do is they provide a small side of emergency preparedness information. Get people together for the sake of getting together. Give them a reason, give them something to talk about. Is your go bag up to date? Do you have water at your house? What is going on? Little drops of stuff, small sides of emergency preparedness, and then keep the conversation going. Because that's what you want. That's what builds fabric. That's what will allow your neighborhood to be able to better relate to each other. And maybe during an emergency, to be able to respond quicker with each other to whatever it is that happens to be going on. A small side. A small side, I just think that's great. Okay, lighting lane also inside. First part that I want to point out, co-leaders. Okay, really important. How many of you that are neighborhood leaders have co-leaders in your neighborhood? All right, yes, absolutely important. And actually, Royland now has 2. We heard that earlier. Okay, that's important. It really is important if you want this to succeed in your neighborhood, you're going to need help. Co-leaders, and we'll touch on that again. But the other thing that I wanted to point out about this is they've set up, or they are looking to set up, a reward system. Okay, this is a neighborhood that's been together for a while. They've gone through some things together, but what they decided was that what was happening with their go bags across the neighborhood wasn't quite enough. So what they've decided is, okay, well, let's see if we can come up with a reward system that will allow people to see, oh, okay, so she's doing a better job with her go bag than I'm doing with mine, but there's a little reward, there's a little incentive for people to be able to do things. So that's something that they've come up with. That's a little bit of a best practices to look at possibly doing a reward system in your neighborhood. So is this going okay? I have a tendency to talk fast.
Is that keep going?
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, Ellis Court, also in town. So this is a neighborhood that currently is doing a lot of radio check-ins. I don't know, maybe you got the impression we're using radio out in Sebastopol, right? I mean, we are using radio out in Sebastopol. We're trying very hard to learn more and to be better at using radio. Okay, but the important thing here that I wanted to point out, they have a strong group of 4 or 5 people. Not just a co-leader. They have a strong group of 4 or 5. But the other thing that I want to point out here that's really interesting to me is that they do their work checking in during active storms. It's a trigger. That's the trigger. When do we use our radios? Active storms. Any sort of a alert that might come up. What is the trigger that you're going to use to make sure that you're checking on your neighbors? What is the trigger that you're going to know that your neighbor is using to check on you? What are those triggers? Okay, what they use, simply an active storm. Something that gives reason for everybody to check in, and that happens to be on the radio, but it doesn't just have to be about radio. The active storm could just get you to walk down the street. Check in on the neighbor that you know maybe has a little bit of a difficulty right now, whatever the vulnerability might be, whatever that is, using something as a trigger to get motivated within your neighborhood, to get people checking in on whatever your neighborhood has decided is important, but using a trigger to get there. Okay, Wagnon Road, this is pretty long, so I'm going to jump in. Partway down, you'll see in parentheses, circle the Wagnons. Right? I mean, I saw that at first and I was just like, that's great. But there it is again. They've named their group. Their group has an identity, circle the Wagnons. That identity is really important. And there's a lot of things in here that are actually pretty important. Besides Wagnon Road, the group includes neighbors from nearby streets, multiple streets. Think about that, multiple streets. Falstaff, Tilton, Bodega Highway. Okay, and then they use their email group. I'm sorry, I'm getting in your way, aren't I? They use their email group. They've been using it for a long time. And you get down to the bottom, or close to the bottom. Fortunately, people have respected the list's purpose and not abused it. What is the result of that? Having an email group like this has been very helpful in bonding neighbors. Okay? People respect each other. People shared information. That information was important, personal. They shared it. It's been respected. Over time, they connect more. And look at what they connect about. Their neighborhood meetings, down trees, power line situations. Power line situations. Like, what is that, right? You know, power lines down or not. Like, what is it? It's not an emergency. They're not calling it an emergency. They're calling it a situation because they're going to get into action. Look what they do about pothole repair lobbying. They're not just bitching, right? They're actually doing something about it. Again, this is a neighborhood that's been working together for a long time. What happens when you get your neighborhood over that hump? Over that hump of just trying to get together, what happens? You get into action. You get into doing stuff in your neighborhood. You get into taking care of the small things. And when you're taking care of the small things, what you're doing is you're getting ready for the big thing. Okay, and that bit of work that you're doing all along, hopefully the big thing never happens. We don't want it to happen. But while we're doing all these small things along the way, if the big thing does happen, we stand a much better chance of being able to work together, respond appropriately, maybe more smoothly, maybe more effectively, simply because we've done this little bit of work together every once in a while. Lobbying, well, I think that's a great one. Okay, Brookhaven Court, again, you heard from somebody here that's brought this in. So the M1M program, Meet Your Neighbors, asks 3 questions. Who knows what? Who has what? And who needs what? And basically, at least 2 or 3 of those questions are mentioned here. 2 or 3 of those questions are answered here. The important things are knowing who your neighbors are well enough. I think that's really important. I think that's a great statement. Just knowing your neighbors well enough to be able to answer those 3 questions. And for them to be able to answer it in association to you. But they actually stipulate it. Do they have kids? Do they have pets? How many people are in the household? What equipment might they have that would be available to us in case of an emergency? That's really important. Those are the basic questions. I think that's what COPE, that's what I'm sure what Petaluma addresses. I mean, that's really what it's all about. You know, what are we going to be able to do to take care of each other? And we try to do it again with 3 questions. And I think that Brookhaven Court really addressed that. Okay, so now I want to introduce the next slide. And the next slide actually has something to do with me personally. I've been involved with the Meet Your Neighbors program and Sebastopol emergency preparedness, well, for a really, really long time. And so I have a little bit different perspective on things, but I want to be able to share one particular thing and let you know how it is sometimes for me. This happened. This happens, right? This happens to all of us, okay? Somebody doesn't want to participate. Somebody won't answer the door, even if you bring cookies, right? Try wine, but you know, I mean, even if you don't bring cookies, right? So I took this personally for the longest time. I'm sorry, I'm standing in front of you too. I took this personally for the longest time. Every once in a while, I still take it personally. It's really, really difficult for me when I take it personally to step back in and start doing this work again. Okay, it's really difficult. Some of us know it better than others, how difficult it is when you're trying to organize a large group, not just the neighborhood, which is really, really difficult all by itself, right? But you can't take it personally. That's my best practices to you, is try not to take it personally. It doesn't really work. It'll take you a long time to recover from that. And when you see people that don't really want to be involved, just let that go. You know, one of the things that people have said in what we call a leader council meeting is when you see people and they're just sort of like shying away, try to get them to come over. And don't just wave at them in your neighborhood, try to get them to come over. And the other thing is when somebody doesn't really want to participate because maybe they don't like meetings or they're just not that kind of person to do that, just ask them, can we keep you informed? Is it okay if we send you our information? You don't have to interact, but can we keep you informed about what's going on in the neighborhood? From the people that I've talked with, it's 100% response yes. One-way communication, you just tell me stuff and I can do what I want with it, absolutely send it my way. Okay, but the main thing is if they don't want to be involved, that's okay. A lot of the people, like the person that sent me this, which was from this most recent email, the person that sent me this, I always connect with the people that want to step away. I let them know I'm going to take them off the list. Do they want to be completely deleted? Or can I just put them on hold? This person wants to be on hold. So the lesson is let them go, talk to them. If they're willing to reinstate at some point in time in the future, that's great. You know, keep their information, whatever, but keep them connected in some way. If they want to be completely deleted, I delete them. If somebody has moved away, I'm going to go ahead and delete them. Whatever it is that somebody might want to do with not participating, I'm actually okay with that. I heard 55%, you know, coverage 55%. I heard somebody mention 25%. You know, we have a little over 500 people on an email list in Sebastopol, and our community proper is about 7,500. That's a really small percentage, okay? But these are leaders in a neighborhood. So it does represent, like Royland represents 200 people, okay? So those numbers actually are much bigger, but those kinds of percentages, I don't really worry about that too much. What I really worry about is are the people connecting and are they staying connected? That's a really important part. So anyway, try not to take these things personally. Am I doing okay on time? I think that was a yes. Oh. Okay, so this jumped out differently. Thank you, you did this differently. It truly is all about neighbors helping neighbors. This is a nod to the back table, okay? I didn't pay anybody to say that, okay? They actually just said that on their own. But look at what's there. As the leader of Mid-Lynch, you might have heard Janet talk about that. Communication is the key. What kind of communication? I say all kinds. And so these bullet points are helpful. So the group has interacted. Look at the things they've interacted on. Gas leaks, multiple trees falling across the road, getting the CHP to monitor speeding traffic. Okay. Again, they're not just bitching about it, okay? They're actually doing something about the fact that their neighborhood had a problem. They needed to find a solution for that problem, and somewhere within this group that has been working together for a really long time, they felt that it was appropriate and okay for them to get into action. Getting into action to try to solve that problem. Okay, that's a big part of what the MYN and any of these neighborhood programs are about, is that there's a problem, the neighborhood can find a solution. If the solution isn't immediately available, then the neighborhood can reach outside that neighborhood in order to find the solution. If in fact you have some continuity and you know who can do what. That kind of information is really important. Okay, and they communicate through their radio with monthly drills. The thing that I wanted to really bring out is all the while we are practicing our skills, and their skills in this particular as radio operators. But the thing that I really want to try to drive home for you is that practicing skills, okay? It's really, really important. I mean, Marshall can talk about this. Any of the first responders that you talk to in your area, I mean, they talk about what do? They are constantly practicing the things that they're going to need to do. I mean, they're big things, don't get me wrong. But the point is that they're constantly practicing, so that when the proverbial hits the fan, they're actually as ready as they can possibly be to work together to solve whatever the problem is that they're facing. So practicing skills, really, really important. I mean, I can't really stress that enough, that the neighborhoods that I know of in our program in particular that are successful are people that are doing these kinds of things, that are practicing these kinds of skills. And again, not just the radio skills, but the other skills in general. Oh, this is going to be the last one, just so you know. But this brings it back to the Witter Ranch group, okay? From the ice cream social and subsequent meetings from the ice cream social, some issues, some ideas that they had, some things that they wanted to address were brought up. So what they did was followed up. Okay, they followed up to the interest expressed in the neighborhood. It may not have been the interest that they thought that was going to be in the beginning, but that isn't the most important thing. The most important thing is to follow the interest, because that will keep your neighbors and your neighborhood connected. It's really important to be able to follow that. So this particular group, what they wanted to do was to find out, how do first responders feel about the emergency preparedness being done in neighborhoods? In other words, is that stuff that Skip says really valid? I mean, is that like true, that stuff? So we have, this is Darren DeCarley, who's a division chief from Goldridge, that came to the neighborhood to talk about what you're doing in the neighborhood really matters. It matters not only because your neighborhood is going to be more prepared, more resilient, more able to take care of yourself, but you know, if you're doing all those things, taking care of yourself, we don't have to come and try to take care of you because you're able to take care of yourself. They can spend time dealing with the people that are not able to take care of themselves. They can spend time doing the things that's really the top priorities for their job, for the things, for the service that they provide to us. They can do those things if we're able to take care of ourselves. So I mentioned that this group came together in the ice cream social, again, vanilla ice cream. There was maybe 40 people. I'm going to use that number. And I think this number might be 24 people. So a pretty decent percentage of the people that came to that ice cream social came to the follow-up. Okay, the follow-up piece is really, really important. And all of these people, as well as maybe more from the neighborhood, are now looking at bringing sidewalk CPR into the neighborhood, where it's not a licensing, it's not a certificate that we're going to get, but what we're going to get is the basic information about CPR from the Goldridge people. Okay, so we asked Goldridge to come. They did. We are asking them to come again. They're saying yes. And one of the things that I really want you to know is that when you find interest and issues in your neighborhood that you can't answer, ask another neighborhood. If they're not the right people in order to be able to help you solve the problem, ask the pros, whoever the pro might be. Daniel, who's providing first aid, the first aid that was talked about for Mid-Lynch, he's a real pro. It's what he does. He's in our neighborhood group. Okay, he volunteered to do that because people know what he does. We answered those questions, and because we were able to answer those questions, now Daniel actually is providing his services, his professional services, to help neighborhoods. That's the kind of thing that when you're asking those basic questions and you're really searching out, that you find that out. But Daniel is not in the Mid-Lynch neighborhood. He's in a whole nother neighborhood because we have neighborhoods that are talking back and forth across to each other. We have that kind of process. The same as Cope has that. I'm pretty sure probably Petaluma has a place where when you want to come together in smaller groups, when your leaders want to come together in small groups, we provide that opportunity. When we provide that opportunity, then the leaders start to learn about what's happening from one neighborhood to the other. So that was the last slide.
Yeah, right. Does anybody have any questions for Skip?
Oh, yeah. Do you have questions? This is where I get really nervous. Oh, come on.
Yeah, Lupe.
Lupe.
I don't have any questions, but I do want to say thank you to Dick because 3 years ago, when I met him, I was first not a huge help before I was only Delta. And he was introduced to me, and since then, he has not given up on our, again, monolingual Spanish-speaking community members, which is great. I'm very thankful for that. We lost connection maybe for about a year, but for the last year, and Imelda's here from Forestville, we've been trying again to get a Meet Your Neighbor for our Latino community in West County. Those that are here from West County, you guys know that these communities are very unique, spread from each other, but it doesn't mean that we can't help each other just because we're not part of the same community. So I really want to say thank you, Skip, because you keep bringing this essential information into our Latino community. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I also want to say that Gravenstein Health Action Coalition is a big part of that. They've been really, really great as far as working with Linda Hopkins, being able to get some grants to be able to do that kind of work with the Latinx community. I mean, it's a very large percentage of our population in the West County, and we need to continue to try to support them as much as we can. There was another hand back there somewhere, I think. Oh, good.
All right. Thank you.
Too close. Was there anybody else?
All right. Thank you so much, Skip. And next up, we have John Crowley from Cool Petaluma, who is going to give us some of his very best practices.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate this. So, I moved to the United States some 30 years ago, and we rented a little home in Petaluma on Walnut Street. And within 10 days, we got a knock on the door from Helen. She lived about 2 doors down. She was 93 at the time. This was 1992, so she'd been born in 1901 or something like that. Do the math. And she presented us with angel food cake with cream and strawberries. And she said, "Welcome to the neighborhood." She had grown up in Ohio, and she had been through the Dust Bowl, and she and her family had experienced hunger. And she knew the power of community. And she knew just by that simple act of welcoming us to the neighborhood, 2 foreigners. I'm from Ireland, my wife, by then wife is French. And it really struck me. And then it inspired me to ever since then, wherever I've lived, I make jam, plum jam. It's really nice. But it gives me an opportunity to walk over to a neighbor and introduce myself. "Hi, I'm John. Here's my jam. Hope you enjoy it. I live in that house over there. Here's my information." And 2 things. One, it puts me in control of my first interaction with my neighbor. You don't want your first interaction to be when your tree falls on the fence or your dog bites my cat or whatever, that kind of thing. And secondly, it can lead to, you don't know where it can lead to. In most cases, it's led to a whole interaction and relationship that has enriched the neighborhood. And so that kind of thing, it's all to do with social capital. Another thing that really inspired me to do a lot of community building work in Petaluma was a book by Robert Putnam. It's called Bowling Alone. It came out about 25 years ago. And it documents the demise of social capital in the United States and why we don't know our neighbors. I remember growing up in Ireland, my mom sending me across the road to Mrs. Healy's when she was baking and she didn't have 2 eggs. Oh, Johnny, run across the road and get 2 eggs. We wouldn't dream of doing that now. Yet I would imagine that most of us would be very proud of ourselves if somebody did that, because that meant that we have that relationship with our neighbor, which we, to the most part, we don't have in the United States and Western world. But that can change. That's the wonderful part about it. Robert Putnam, he's a sociologist from Yale or Harvard or something like that, did a study of kind of where we're part of things. People in the United States, are we part of churches? Are we part of membership organizations? Do we know our neighbors? Reached the pinnacle probably in the 1950s when we were part of moose lodges and rotaries and churches and things like that. And Sunday morning looked like you went to church and then you swung by the moose or the elks and you had breakfast and you met all your neighbors and you met people not just in your neighborhood but in all over town. And it strengthened the community. And that's what he noticed was taking a nosedive after the 50s. And a lot of it is to do with fear of our neighbors. We're always a little bit fearful of our neighbors. They have a flag, they drive a car that's unfamiliar. We have ideas about our neighbors that aren't exactly the most honest, true, or helpful. One thing I want to note, Robert Putnam, it was really quite an inspiring book for me because it helped me on my journey to be a community leader in Petaluma and do some of the things that I'll tell you about soon. One thing that I'd ask you to remember from today is about 6 months ago, Robert Putnam released a documentary film called Join or Die. This one. It's about our society. It's about our neighborhoods. It's about our connectivity, our human connection with other people. And it documents, obviously from the book, Bowling Alone, but it also documents how do we revive that. And so that's what I mentioned earlier, there's some magic happening in Petaluma. We showed this movie in Petaluma, the Polyclass Center, to about 130 people last month. It was sold out. We're showing it again in Aquas Cafe this Tuesday. It's sold out already. We're going to show it again at the Petaluma Women's Club early next month. And I know that's going to sell out too. There's an understanding in Petaluma that we have to join things in order to change things. And by joining things, I think a lot of people don't want to join things because they feel as though they're going to be, oh, I'm going to be part of something that I don't want to be part of, or I'm an individual and I think I have my own thoughts and I don't want to be assimilated with other people. But when you join something, that organization changes just by the very nature of you joining it. And so I encourage you to, me and a growing group of people are committing ourselves to a kind of a social experiment. We're joining one organization per year for the next 5 years. So I started this 2 years ago. I joined Herman Sons Hall last year. And do some research. You will find the most amazing clubs and organizations in your community. I joined something last year in Petaluma. It's called the Danish Soldiers Club. Now, I'm not a Dane, I'm not a soldier, but they're a container of community. And these containers of community are what is the basis of the United States. I do encourage you to watch that movie. It is available on Netflix, but don't watch it alone. That's not the point. Bring it to the organizations that you're a part of, and use it as a gathering tool to say, here, look what we've got. Look what we have in the United States. Let's fix it. We have the power to do that. And so I'll transition a little bit onto what brought me to where we are now. Out of the Bowling Alone book, it was inspired me to create an organization called Aquas Community Foundation, which at the heart of is building social capital. It's creating relationships between people. It's weaving the fabric of society. And we do that in wonderful ways. Somebody was mentioning, well, I'll tell you just what happened last month. In Petaluma, there's a community called, it's McNear Landing, and it's about 80 homes. And it's just right across the road from the Vets Hall and the bowling alley in Petaluma. And it's about 80 homes, but it seems to be a starter home. So there's a lot of renters there. They move out and move in, and a lot of people there didn't get a great sense of community. So I worked with them, and I worked with the HOA to invite. Another kind of thing that I'm going to tell you about. I own a cafe in town called Aquas Cafe. And we do a lot of experimental work in there on the whole kind of idea of building social capital. And so last month we invited everybody who lives in this McNear Landing. It's about 80 homes. They didn't know each other very well. And we moved, it's a Thursday night, we moved all the tables into one big long table. Everybody comes in, they get a little name tag. And they're invited to move place every 30 minutes on the half hour. And magic was happening. People were sitting beside people and they were looking at each other and saying, "Are you my neighbor? Don't you live 2 doors up? And aren't you the person who lives that house with the beautiful shutters and stuff like that?" It was magic to see the people meeting each other for the very, very first time. I was nearly inundated the following week by beautiful emails saying, "I found a walking partner, I found a friend, I found somebody who does the same profession as me." Just relationships were being built by the very fact of people sitting beside each other. Those people will see each other when they're taking the trash out tomorrow or walking the dog next week. That's a great start, and it's a wonderful, and that's fun. Somebody mentioned beer and wine. Great, have more of it. It's a wonderful social lubricant. That's why we do it. But also the very fact of eating together seems to break down barriers and make the connection just a little bit easier. So about 3 years ago, we had this wonderful opportunity. There was a challenge grant that went out to about 40 cities in the United States. It was called Cool Block. And it was kind of your typical grant, a lot of paperwork. Not that easy, but anyway. Petaluma, LA, and Irvine were the 3 selected cities that won this challenge grant. And out of that came this organization called Cool Petaluma. And if you're going to organize with Cool Petaluma, we put a big call out. We need volunteers. And if you're going to be a volunteer with Cool Petaluma, our organization, will help you and your 5 or 10 neighbors go through a series of meetings, gatherings, 1 per month for 5 months. The first one is about emergency preparedness. The second one is about, let me just check the second one. Second one is about sustainable foods. It's primarily it started off being a climate action organization, but we've since realized that it really is a social capital building organization. So the third one is about improving transportation, getting people out of cars onto bicycles, much more healthy for us all. Fourth one is about building efficiency, looking at the energy that you use in your home, from water to electricity. How do you save money? How do you save resources? And the final one is about nature restoration. What do we do for our planet? We have built a curriculum. We're now changing this over from being, well, we're keeping Cool Petaluma, but we're also launching a thing called Cool Communities. So that, because we want to spread this, we have been working with people in I think Sebastopol and also Healdsburg to try and get that implemented in those communities. But a lot of it really is getting to know your neighbor. We know that in any emergency, the likelihood of you coming out of that emergency is directly dependent on how well you know your neighbors. It just is. It's just so. That's what we do, is we go and get to know our neighbors. So our first meeting, for example, is designed to get people to know our neighbors. So we're all actually going to be doing a little exercise in about 2 minutes. I'm going to ask you to be part of this. Have we handed these out yet? Do you have these at your table yet? Yes, let's hand these out. I always kind of say we're social animals, but we're really bad at it. We really are. I mean, we've got anxieties. We've got, how do you start a conversation? Do we walk up to complete strangers and can we have a conversation? If you knock on your neighbor's door and say, can we have a conversation? They'll probably call the police on you. Hopefully not. But one of the things, though, in Cool Petaluma, the first thing that people do when they volunteer with us is they have to go and knock on all of the doors of all of their neighbors. That can be a terrifying experience because in some cases, we've lived beside somebody for 30 or 40 years, and we don't know their first name. We don't know what they do. We don't know. We wave at them on the street. Yep, hi, Frank, how are you doing? But we have no idea anything about them. So who comes knocking on our door these days? It's either not encyclopedia anymore, but you can tell how old I have. But you get my point. It's not normal to have somebody, but when our volunteers come knocking on the door and say, inviting you to a party over my place because we're going to build a neighborhood resilience plan, it's a little bit different from you want to buy an encyclopedia. So this is a small example of the kind of tools that we use in order to get people connected. So I'm going to have you all stand up, if it's comfortable for you, and find somebody you've never met before. This gives you the opportunity for playing bingo. And we're just going to do a little bit of it. But this, as you can see, it's built, each of the columns has something to do with the 5 topics that we have. First one is emergency preparedness. Let's do that one, as this is all about emergency prep. So I'll take 5 minutes, take a pen, and go and talk to somebody and fill out the first column. So how was that? So do take these. This is an example of something that really works. Now, you might change it. Take this, copy it. If you're looking for the Word document, I'll send it to you. But take it and make it relevant to your organization. Make it relevant to your community. This is specific for Cool Petaluma volunteers and organizations. Sorry?
What's number 2?
Number CSA is a community service agriculture. It's one of those boxes that you get from your local farmer. Yeah. Welcome. So that's what I really want to leave you with is it's about community. It's about creating that relationship with your neighbor that you don't know yet. That's it. Thank you. Just keep on getting to know your neighbors. Yes, you have a question.
That was really fun, and I would love to.
I'm pretty sure it is, and if not, I'll put it up there by Tuesday. All right, thank you. Yeah, no, this is a wonderful organization. We are spreading. Right now, coolpetaluma.org. It's a little specific to Petaluma, but we're going to be coming out within the next month with coolcommunities.org, and that's going to be a kind of a more generic program that you can customize to your community. So, any last questions? All right, thank you very much. All right, thank you.
Thanks. And next up, we have Priscilla Abercrombie and Marshall Turbeville, who I'll go get, to talk about what they're doing with COPE.
Great. Thank you so much for having us here. We are so honored to be in a room filled with so many of you that are doing such important work. So what I'm going to share with you is just more of a perspective from organizing in northern Sonoma County, and I hope that it resonates with you. There's Chief Turbeville. It's always nice to know when he's here. You all know Marshall Turbeville. Yeah, a lot of you do, from northern Sonoma County. Great. All right, we'll keep going here. Our mission and vision is here. Really, it's about preparedness. It's about bringing communities together. The original name for COPE was Citizens Organized to Prepare for Emergencies, and we changed it to Communities because we really feel that community is really what it's all about. We have a lot of values that we came into this work with, and I wanted to share this with you because this is what drives us, these values. This is why we do what we do, because we really think it's important to, again, share community, share best practices. Anything that we develop as a part of a COPE group, we share with everybody else. If you go to our website, you'll find tons of things that we've developed that we want to share with you. We also find that trust is a really important value. Not only trust amongst ourselves, but trust with this guy, trust with our DEM staff, Nancy and Jeff DuVall, and all of the other people in our communities that we need to work with, the folks that are at Corazon, other organizations in our community that are doing vital work. We trust them, and we try to build relationships with them because it's super important to collaborate, to all work together. I have some skills that I can put into the pot, but everybody comes with their own skills and ways that we can collaborate together. That's what makes it rich and beautiful, the work that we do. When we come together, we can start to advocate. Skip was talking about filling potholes. That's what comes out of coming together. The stuff that bugs us as neighbors, we can do something about it. Now we can advocate as a group instead of an individual. There's much more power in a group than there is as an individual. And we're all about action. We don't want to sit around a table and, as Skip also said, and just bitch. That's not getting us anywhere. Let's take action. How can we take action and make a difference? And the chief talked about that as well. I mean, what we do now is so important, taking action now so that in the future we're better prepared when the big stuff happens. We're a grassroots organization. We're bottom up. Marshall did not come to Fitch Mountain and say, you guys need to start a Coke group. That's not the way that it happened. It was a bunch of neighbors that got together and said, wow, Lake County's burning. Look at what we got. We got one road in and out. We live on a mountain that's a big preserve where a lot of people from out of town come. We're really at risk here. We need to organize and get better prepared. And that's how we became a Coke group on Fitch Mountain. It's bottom up. And that's the way that it's kept us moving as well. We're the ones who wanted to do it, so it was easier for us to organize and move forward and then involve our fire agencies and other folks. You want to say something?
I'll just add in that I think this is working right.
No, I don't. I'm not hearing it.
How about now?
Yep.
All right. I'm not going to stay in the box. So on the firefighter side, what I tell the firefighters is know at least, or I tell them, hey, know at least one community member by name. Like, get out there and learn the community, because it's going to be mean a lot more than when they're responding. It's just not whatever road when you go to that emergency now. It's...
Yeah.
I needed the better coloring. So get out there and know the community. So like today, while we're in the meeting, there's the Cal Fire Station. I supervise Hilton working in Hacienda. Hacienda's in Community Work Day. And that's because we've established a relationship. Can you imagine if it would be that Cal Fire's going to come into Hacienda and do roadside clearance today? How would we even go about doing that? Would that be perceived as government coming in and wanting to just clear cut people's roads? Yeah. So the much better way is a community champion there, who's not here today because he's probably there, came forward and said, hey, let's do these community work days. Let's get a dumpster. Let's get a chipper. Let's use the county's free chipper program. Let's figure this out. And so that makes it easier for big government, state government, Cal Fire to come in and just partner on those days to go, work with those neighbors and do roadside clearance. So we've gotten around permission slips, gotten around CEQA compliance, gotten around some normal government barriers to get stuff done. And yeah, I get it. It's just a little bit, but if we all do a little bit, it means a lot more. So that goes back to grassroots. Start thinking of solutions, start thinking of ideas. And if you bring the solution to government, sometimes it's easier to partner and get it done than if government says, oh, I got a great idea. Let's put a 2-lane road everywhere in your community with pullouts and streetlights and curbs. And that's not going to be accepted, right? So however we can work together, grassroots to me is the answer, especially in these more rural areas. So bring the ideas, bring the solutions. I won't use the B word because I'm being recorded, but complain, but propose solutions, and just know sometimes it's frustrating for me too. But if we can work together, I think that's the best. So,
am I lucky or what to get to work with someone as amazing as this? And you probably have amazing people in your communities as well. Maybe you haven't connected with them yet, right? All right. But he is a pretty special guy. So our purpose really is to serve our communities as leaders in emergency preparedness. This is a map of our COPE communities in northern Sonoma County. I think we're around 50 at this point. And we've been growing over the years. We're 10 years in the process. It's slow but sure. Got to just have trust in the process, right? It'll spread and we'll get into areas that are more and more at risk.
And just remember, it kind of goes along with what I just said. Every one of these communities has a different flavor or feel. There's Map Your Neighborhood, there's COPE. There's all these different ways about self-organizing. To me, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I think some work better than others, but every community's got to recognize they're unique. They have unique needs. Maybe it's a one way in, one way out, whatever it is. And this allows that flexibility. So it's not government push down. It's what do you guys want to do? How do you want to organize? Makes my job a lot easier because then it's one community champion I'm talking with versus 30 people calling me, and I don't know who to trust or who has the best answer. So, yeah.
Great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our initiatives. Nancy said, inspire the group. What is the group? Tell the group what kinds of things you're doing. And that's my hope in sharing this with you. So one of our initiatives is to create a public forum to educate, train, and encourage more people to be COPE. And again, it's Map Your Neighborhood, whatever you want to organize under. Skip and I love each other. We support each other's programs. We are not in competition with each other. It's great that you guys are picking one or the other or another way to organize. We don't really care. It's all the same. This is our original Fitch Mountain group. So there's 7 steps. Not going to go through that. That's not what I'm here for today. But just want you to know we developed a structure so that people can adopt the program when they're ready to in an organized way and really help them through the process. We have developed a COPE Leader Handbook, which has tons of things in it, from everything from an agenda that you can use at a meeting, action items that you might want to do if you're going to become FireWise or have action plans in your area, things that you might want to do. Chipper days, all kinds of things in there. We also, with Nancy, developed a disaster knowledge digest. So what is it that people that are leaders around preparedness and communities should know? And here it is all in one place. I know it can be intimidating to be a leader around preparedness. Oh my God, do I know enough? Have I gone to enough meetings? Can I answer people's questions? This is one way to, one resource that we have to share with you all. What other kinds of things have we done to support our leaders? We have a quarterly meeting. We've changed from a monthly, what we called our monthly leadership meeting, to a quarterly community meeting. Now we're inviting anyone from the community to come to these meetings. Very excited about that. We will be meeting in April. We have a monthly info session. This is via Zoom for anybody interested in starting a COPE program. We can sit down and talk about what COPE is, go through those 7 steps, answer questions, try to COPEify for your area. What does it mean to have a COPE program in your area? What matters to you and your neighbors? What's important to you? Best practice templates. Again, we have templates for how to start GMRS radios in a COPE neighborhood. How do you organize around that? Why not share all that stuff? You guys don't need to recreate things that have already been done. We do educational webinars where we have speakers that are experts in various topics, whether it's flood, earthquakes, fires, we had one with IBHS and how the Maui house survived the fire. Those kinds of things that are important to our communities. We have a newsletter we send out, and of course, we're available on social media. We also developed an engagement toolkit for our leaders with ideas, again, around how you can engage your community in the work that we're doing. You want to say anything about any of that?
It's part of the 7-step, but like, what's your defined area? And that's sometimes hard to do, is where's there alignment of communities, or where, literally where you don't get along or where you share a road? Because that's one of the biggest things here is where are we going to get consensus? Where are we going to get, some momentum to move forward versus just sit around and complain about stuff? So this is just ways to push information out. Like, rather than getting an email from some government person like me. If someone else puts that email out, hey, come to this meeting, or what do you know about defensible space, or how do you request a defensible space inspection, or how do we get evacuation tags? Just giving a better way to get information both ways, but then also knowing at what scale to do it appropriately. So you guys are from out the county, which is great. You can see a lot of folks aren't represented here. So some of the real rural areas are hard to get information to, or there's big geographic areas that are covered by one community. So versus downtown Sebastopol or Santa Rosa, which I don't work a lot in those areas, that's different, information exchange and different, what they would like versus in the more remote areas. So it all goes into that. And those, yep.
And here you are in the same uniform.
Here.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. With his coffee cup. He usually has his coffee cup. Yeah. There, you look more like yourself now.
Well, that's what happens when you call me out in the summer when I'm not sleeping a lot, so there's always coffee. So that was a summer meeting for West Soda Rock, and that might have been like right before the Kincaid fire, like literally 4 days before.
Got a copy of your now too.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, that's the way you'll see him. And if he comes to your community to do a talk, be sure and have the coffee on, because he does, or some tea. Now you're drinking some tea.
Yeah,
out here.
tea. But I'm glad, like Skip showed Darren to Crowley, like the more you can engage, get the firefighters out there. And they can tell you, you guys see all the studies and the videos, and the firefighters can say, well, it's really like this, or this is what you can do better for your community. And so you get a much more hands-on, unique experience. Same thing with your police department or sheriff's officer. This used to be a big thing about community patrolling. Less likely you see law enforcement walking around, but it's the same philosophy. The more they know people, know the property, now when something bad happens, they know how to get to your gate. They know where you're at. They know someone that maybe needs some assistance, maybe in a wheelchair. So the more you can get the responders out there, and I'm glad more and more responders are getting out there, it's huge. Makes a big difference. Those things that matters more than anything during the emergency. Is a firefighter or a law enforcement or whoever the responder is has been to your property before. I'd say that's the number one thing. They're more vested in saving your property because they know you. They know you've done work ahead of time, and that's what this gives you. Okay, firefighters know when we walk into a community if someone, I don't want to say doesn't care, but someone's done something. There's address signs, there's clearance, there's safety zones. Makes a difference when we walk in that general impression. So, and that's what this all does.
Great. And you see Diana Borges down there in Windsor speaking with some of her senior groups. So it's us working in partnership together, delivering this message around preparedness. We developed a Smoke Ready program at our COPE in northern Sonoma County, and I've been trying to weave in our funders when I can, because we've been able to get some funding to distribute air purifiers, and this was some work that we did with NC, Nuestra Comunidad, and our Healdsburg Fire Department, getting out some air purifiers. And then again, we're available on social media. That's another place where I put a lot of information out, especially if there's an incident happening, a flooding, that kind of thing. I try to keep that up to date with resources and places people can go to get information if roads are closed, etc. Just keeping it fresh. So this picture is not an accident. Promote partnership and collaboration with government agencies, public safety organizations, and others. I don't know about you guys, but I've been doing this work by the seat of my pants. I have no idea what I'm doing. I was a healthcare provider. What did I know about fire or anything else that's disaster related, really? So it's really been trust in each other and the ability to collaborate together that's made this work successful. I am so grateful for those partnerships and the folks that we have to work with. It is amazing. What Jeff said is so true, and others have said. We're so lucky to have the folks we have to work with. We couldn't do as much as we have done without it.
And I've already kind of talked about this a little bit, but firefighters, law enforcement, those entities in public safety, there's other entities in public safety, you're pretty much paying for our availability, which means we're going to hang out, sit around, and wait for something bad to happen. I don't know. We got to have that, but can some of that time be put towards prevention, preparedness, learning an area, making things better, so when the bad thing happens, we're better prepared? So that's what I see as a potential change in public safety, firefighters and law enforcement. There's code enforcement stuff. There's, fire alarm inspector stuff going on. That's all ahead of time. But firefighters essentially, and law enforcement to some extent, sit around. Mentality is I can't do anything because I might get tired or I might need to go do something in half an hour, so I can't do something right now. That's the mentality. I'm trying to change the mentality is, hey, let's go spend 5 minutes doing something now so you don't have to do something in half an hour. Let's go talk about how to get your gate open, or I'll call 911 from your cell phone, something like that. So it's better when you call 911 in half an hour. So I think that's going to happen over time. But you demanding public safety agencies to do more ahead of the emergency, that's how you guys can create change too, is investing time up front versus waiting for something bad to happen. So change firefighters sitting around watching TV or drinking coffee into going out and doing something. And then you got to realize on a day like today where there's no wildfires, a lot of the wildland firefighters are available. So we can go do a hacienda work day. We can go do another work day. It's a much easier on our time, remember, if we work together to make that happen. And then think about the emergency. Think about a major flooding event, a major storm, the cat in the tree that falls down. That might be your emergency. And if we have nothing else going on, we're going to rush out there and deal with those. But now we got like 3 fires, or someone needs CPR. We're not going to deal with the cat in the tree. We're not going to deal with the tree in the road. So that's kind of the scale we get at. So the earthquake, the floods, the large scale events, power outages, those are the things that are going to be the worst for the firefighters to deal with, is because we got to triage and prioritize. So during these major fires, it went down to, hey, only the ambulance is going to go. No firefighters are going to go. And that's happening over and over. Or we can't send anybody to that fire. Or we can't send anybody to the minor bleeding, which would otherwise be at code 3, like everyone goes lights and sirens. So the more you guys can help each other, help your community, force public safety to come out and do things before the emergency, all huge.
I put in a picture of the recent debriefing that we did from the Point Fire. This is something we did on Fitch Mountain after the Kincaid Fire. We had about 100 people from the community at the Villa Chanticleer to talk about. We had the Sheriff's Department CAL Fire and Healdsburg Fire there. And we all kind of talked about what went well and what didn't go so well and what do we want to improve for the future. I think some of the most amazing things that happen in that room are for our firefighters and first responders to talk about what the experience was like for them, and for us to talk from our side about what that experience was like for us, and to be in that room and share, some pretty heartfelt feelings about what that experience was like with each other. We're changing the way that we both react and how we go forward in the future. Not only in reacting to emergencies, but how we work with each other, right? When you sit in a room with someone from the Sheriff's Department who said, I'd been up 48 hours and I was trying to navigate, through these neighborhoods I've never been in before, and, you start to hear from their perspective what they've been through, then maybe I'm not going to try to push so hard to get back into my home, a half an hour after the emergency is over, right? Maybe I'll start to understand why they're there and why they're stopping us, or whatever the perspective might be. But we also were lucky enough to have John Mills from Watch Duty there as well, and for them to talk about and understand how we use the app and what things might not have gone so well, and et cetera. So it's been an amazing experience to be able to do these debriefs. Did you want to say anything about it?
No, I mean, I could talk forever about this stuff, but, personally, one of the things is, I've seen a lot of bad stuff over the years. I've been pretty much at every major fire in Sonoma County since before 2015 even. And so one of my coping mechanisms is, a lot of bad stuff happened, but in my mind, it's like, how much did I do before that emergency happened? How much did we prepare? And that's what keeps me going in for future emergencies too. So it's really, how can we make things better? The firefight, there's inefficiencies. There's a lot of things that don't go how you think they go or you see in the movies. So it's definitely good to talk about them. I think more firefighters should go to these to hear what people's experiences are. But the chief's hearing about it, passing it on, community members talking about it, like why were these people evacuated for 7 days? Why did it take a while to get the official SoCo alert out? Why did this stuff happen? So next time, you don't need to wait for government. You know what to do because it happened this way before, and you learn, and then we pass it on to the next generations too. So these debriefs are great because everything's out on the table. It's not the fire burned 973 acres. It was contained on Tuesday at 8 o'clock in the morning. No, this is how it really went down. This is what we could have done better. And there's a lot of success stories that come out of these, right? Bottom line is no one died. Bottom line, right? Couple houses burned. We can learn from that. And it was good to get through it all.
And I think it's going to be better next time. Because one of the things that came out of this meeting was the sheriff's department was there, and we got to talk about how they had evacuated some roads in Dry Creek that the people that lived in Dry Creek didn't know what those roads were. That wasn't helpful. They got that feedback, and they're going to start just doing zones, just straight zones, and not so much around roads. Well, the residents needed to hear that because of the fires 5 blocks away, and they don't feel like they need to be evacuated. They're going to be evacuated because they're going by zone now. They're not going to be as specific, and the areas aren't going to be as small. So you see what I mean? How cool that is. We're just super lucky. So these are the types of activities that we've been involved in. Again, it's so important for us to take action and do things, not just talk. So these are the types of things that we've done. Early on, we were doing CWPPs, but now that we have a countywide CWPP, so we really want people to more go towards FireWise, doing more of IBHS work, pre-attack maps. That's, Marshall could talk about why we did those, but those basically were because so many areas were not accurately reflected in the mapping system for our first responders. And we wanted additional information on there. We have community chipper days. We have a packet that we offer online with all the things you need to know. Who are the people that you need to call? Here's a flyer that you can use, all of that, so that you don't have to reinvent that for your neighborhood. And again, there's all kinds of things in here that we have developed. These signs, we got an architect to design the sign. We had some Eagle Scouts that put together the signs. We found people in Cope neighborhoods who found people who would let people put the sign on their land. Those are the kinds of things that Cope is strong in. And we've done evacuation drills and plans, and you guys have all been talking about that. We have now 8 FireWise communities. We've been working with Fire Safe Sonoma around that, so that's pretty exciting. And a piece of this, again, is advocating for our communities. When we started doing this work, we started realizing there was a lot of bureaucracy out there. And we wanted to be a part of changing that. So we've done things like, letter writing campaigns or participating with the board of, with the Board of Supervisors on 13A, some other things. We got together with Assemblymember Wood to talk about this is a pre-attack map and just let him know what kind of work we're doing and what's important to us. Makes a big difference. And now I'm turning it over to you. This is our last initiative, which is really looking for and pursuing funding opportunities that support our preparedness work. And we've been doing this together.
Yeah, so there's many grants out there. It just so happens to be that most of the grant funding right now is for vegetation management, fuels reduction, wildfire risk reduction. But let's just say you wanted to do a grant for address signs, maybe a map box at the start of your road that has all maps in it for properties that only first responders have access to. Maybe it's getting NOAA radios. Back then it was a big deal. Now you can get them pretty much free. It's got to be based on a community level, community benefit plan. Otherwise, it's kind of like a one-off. And there's very few grants that are for a single property owner. So vegetation management is what I'll focus on, but there is other grant opportunities out there. County of Sonoma currently has some that are underway, and there's always some that are being dreamed up or conceived. Just yesterday, one was submitted for a USDA, Department of Ag, not through FEMA, for a community wildfire defense grant that affects part of Mark West, Porter Creek Petrified Forest, France Valley, and some other areas too, about $5 million. So that's veg management specific. So how does it go down? Well, we got everything from burning to goats. So this has got to be accepted by the community if you're interested in it, both because there might be chainsaw noise at 7 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning that people might not appreciate. Or there could be smoke if we're doing burn piles, or there could be traffic delays. So this stuff's really got to come from the community. No one else is going to get an email out to every possible person or a text out saying, hey, try not to come down this road today because there's a chipper blocking the 1-lane road. We always get the pool guy or Amazon, but we can't stop those guys. So that's how this goes down. And if the community is willing to accept prescribed burning, both pile or broadcast, which when you think about it, it's the only natural thing we have to reduce vegetation is burning it. But it also comes with smoke and health problems, also PTSD related problems. And grapes. So there's some things we can't overcome unless the community is willing to accept it. So these are various things. If you guys are interested in doing vegetation management grants, don't wait for the grant to be announced and then put a project together. You should be at the community level already planning out your projects, like laying everything out on the table, have the fire department there, law enforcement there, everything you want to do. And this is your Firewise USA action plan. But it's more than just go do veg management. You're defining a geographic area and what treatment type you want to get done. Okay, and that then evolves into getting property owner consent because you're going to have to let government on your land to do the work or pay a contractor to do the work and to do what's called the CEQA studies, which is the environmental compliance. If it's a federal grant, then it's also federal environmental compliance, which is NEPA. So think about where you want to do the work, how you want to do the work, property owner permission to do project design, environmental compliance, and then you apply for the grant. Otherwise, it's a lot of work to do when the grant is announced. So most likely CAL FIRE fire prevention grants will be announced in a couple months, and that's a good state grant to apply for as a CAL FIRE fire prevention grant. County of Sonoma had the vegetation management grant program through Ag and Open Space. Those grants may come about again. They didn't happen last year. But I would say just design your projects and somebody eventually will come do it or fund it. Believe me, CAL FIRE is probably going to go to year-round fire stations being staffed. It's going to happen in a couple years. Remember, I don't want firefighters sitting around waiting for the emergency. I want them out there doing the work. Well, we can't do the work unless the community knows where they want the work done, community is okay with the work, and we have that environmental compliance in place. So the more stuff you can do to make your projects shovel ready, implementation ready is huge, because it's government wants quick action. Like, we give you money, go do the work right away. Don't spend a lot of time studying and figure out how you're going to do it. That should have all been done. Okay. So that's the general process of different ways of getting funding for vegetation management. PG&E is providing money for vegetation management. Right now, they have a grant program open for work within 500 feet of power lines. They have other opportunities as well for work. Okay. So far, the FEMA funds have not been held up or anything at the federal level. The grant that was applied for that was due yesterday is through a different department, Department of Ag, which is the Forest Service. So that's how the system works. And then at the bottom is the roles the community groups play, which is huge. I've been primarily talking about getting the project ready, but once you go to work, it changes the role a little bit. So you got to work with fire departments, CAL FIRE, your local fire department. If you're in a city, it's not CAL FIRE. So work with your local fire department. The project has to be strategic. It can't just be go cut vegetation to cut vegetation. So it's got to be strategic. And it's got to be for community benefit. So while the work happens on a private property, it's for community benefit. Okay. We are not at a point that we can just go manage vegetation everywhere. So we got to prioritize it. So that's why it becomes strategic and community benefit. If there was just money to manage land everywhere, then we'd be a different lens. Okay.
Marshall, could I just give an example of that? So when you say strategic, it would be something like doing roadside vegetation along a major roadway that may be an evacuation route.
Yep.
It might be a shaded fuel break.
Around a community.
Yeah. Yeah.
Normally we
So
stop.
that's I think what you're
Correct. Yeah. So strategic from firefighter terminology is usually along a road, because that gets us in, gets you out, and most fires are human caused, 95% plus. So that slows the fire down that starts by the road. Or it's ridge top. That's where we tend to stop fires on ridges, because that's where the fire loses that uphill spread, heat transfer, and that's where air tankers make drops. So usually that's strategic. So roadside is also good, because then it demonstrates to the community what a shaded fuel break is. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I like how that looks. And then we can get access more to get more properties or projects. So that's the green handshake deal, is working together before, planning it out, getting a program of projects. And then once we go into implementation stage, it's huge about coordination about, hey, this is what's happening Monday. You're going to hear some noise. There's some chippers. There might be some smoke. That last little stage of getting the information out there.
So the last thing there was about what we expect from our COPE leaders. So we've gotten a fair amount of funding for vegetation grants in our area, fortunately. And so the role of the COPE people has really been getting buy-in from residents, and how important that is to do the communication piece, to warn people about the road's going to be closed, whatever it might be, so that people are prepared. What a big difference that makes, right? When people know something's happening. So using the group me, using email, whatever it is that you use to communicate in your area, you leverage that to help these projects be successful.
All right, so this is an example of roadside shaded fuel break project. So before on the left, after on the right. Some people might say, well, why didn't you take out more of those madrone trees across the road? Well, the community didn't want it. I'm not going to force it. Something's better than nothing. So as time goes on, usually it's like, well, you should have took the trees out. Okay, we'll come back. We got to get money for that. So this was just understory clearance, what a natural historical wildfire would have done. And this provides firefighter access, evacuation, and then we can stop or slow a fire. And this is a unique situation where I'll talk about the three roles, where the fiscal sponsor, whoever gets the money, is also going to do the work, and they're also going to act as a CEQA environmental compliance. So this is with one of my other hats. I just got fed up with all the extra stuff and steps, and there's also government bidding and public works and prevailing wage. So we at the fire district went to employing our own vegetation management employees. Starting pay now is $70,000 a year plus full benefits. And we're a government agency, so we can do CEQA, and we can take on the money either through a nonprofit affiliation or through government to apply for grants. I don't know of anybody else in the county doing that right now. So that would be like the city of Santa Rosa takes money and then uses city workers to go do the work. That's not happening. County of Sonoma taking money and then using county employees to go do the work. Not really happening. So they could, but it's not. So that's your simplest version of how you're going to get a project done, is one entity does it all. Okay. Maybe fire districts get to that. The resource conservationists maybe could do that, but that's the simplest version. Okay. So very little, less coordination now. You don't got to email 3 different entities, make sure it's on the same page. You got to run multiple project managers. It makes it super simple. Okay. So me with one of my other hats is I partner with you, I go find the money, and then I supervise the employees that go do the work. But most likely it's maybe something like this. Not that this is bad. This is partnering with COPE now to...
It's not bad.
Well, I'm just saying bad because Skip represents map your neighborhood. We could have done it. If you guys got to get your nonprofit status, right, then you can be a fiscal sponsor and take funds on. Otherwise, you're going to have to pay somebody else to administer your grant. So this is another roadside project, West Side Road near Wooler Bridge, where COPE was the fiscal sponsor. The fire district took the CEQA lead as government. County of Sonoma could have done it, public infrastructure, resource conservation district, but we got a good partnership where we do it. Plus, we're going to do the work, which was cutting and chipping where we could and big burn piles for the larger logs. And we burned this on a rainy day last November. So this project was supposed to be 18 months. It was done in 4 because we were just timed it just right. We take we for which we, the fuels, the vegetation management employees of the Northern Sonoma County Fire District. So we, for you, might be circuit riders, Conservation Corps North Bay, other private contractors out there. This could potentially cost you $10,000 an acre. This is a county road, so you're going to have to pay for, I don't know if Lynn's still here, pay for traffic control, pay for permits. Me as government, I can get that all waived by the county of Sonoma. County of Sonoma is great to work with. So we bring down the cost per acre when you partner with government. I just got fed up with a lot of this stuff, so I found a pathway through it all. Okay, here's another, this is the other thing about that project is the before is August, really nice and green. We started doing the work in September, towards the end of November, and we burned the piles in December. We started doing the work, and kind of like a field of dreams, I tell people, as soon as you start the project, people want to start joining. So County Roads came out in flail mode, and we provided a water truck so they wouldn't start a fire, because that was their holdup. We're going to start a fire. I'm like, okay, we'll take care of that. So we did their traffic control. We brought a fire truck out, firefighters there, and we got flail mowing done. So we increased the amount we could get done. There was also a phone line that had been laying on the ground for multiple years from a winter storm tree falling. Well, we got the phone company to come out and fix it because we gave them traffic control. So now we could flail mow. That all happened on one day. So now the road's only closed one time. And we got more done. And that's what it looked like in November before we did the burning. Turn it back over to you.
Does that pertain to also to like private roads as far as if they're, off the Baker Highway, like we're in Sebastian?
So private roads in the county jurisdiction, you don't need to get the County of Sonoma permit for traffic control or road closure.
But grants for any there still available?
Grants are still available. Yep. You're going to have to do CEQA compliance, which I've worked with Goldridge. You're probably in Goldridge's district. Goldridge is on board. They're getting there. They just don't have the employees to go do the work. So they'll have to contract out, which will increase your cost perhaps a little bit.
So they have to be those types of workers, or can you have the community?
You can do a community would be the match. So a current project going on right now in Camp Meeker is a County of Sonoma grant. Occidental Community Service District applied for it. Occidental Community Service District was a lead agency. The community did about an acre of treatment. Contractor did, I think, about 15 acres of treatment. So the community did a match that way. Yep.
That's really important too. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yep.
The match issue is really attractive to funders. And also as community leaders, how important it is to keep track of the hours that your volunteers are doing so that you can say to funders, I see nodding, people that have gotten funding know this, and how hard it is to get people to tell you. But if you're doing Firewires, you know that you have to do that anyway. So keeping track of people's hours is really important. And these are all the various funders that we've had.
And we use the volunteer hourly rate, which I think is $30 an hour for the match. So any emails, meetings, anything you do counts as a match, monetary match.
These are the two words I keep getting from everybody up here. Just two words is either proactive or react.
Yeah.
Everything you're it's like, wow, how do you get it across to our neighbors, to everybody else that it's worthwhile for our properties just to join instead of get insurance companies to help out, somebody else to help out as far as, the thing that affects most of us. We just rebuilt our house was our insurance company. And the first thing I did, because everybody's saying, well, State Farm's canceling everybody. No, they're not. The basic is right now, depending on what you do when you rebuild your house. And the first thing I did was check with my State Farm agent. Keith Garlock said, Mike, these are the things you need to do. Yeah. My insurance is cheaper now on a home that's worth probably 50% more, maybe 60 than it was before, just because of the planning. So it means a lot.
And that proactive piece is really important, and your neighbors see what you're doing. If you're out there doing work yourself, it makes a difference. I don't know about you, but we hear chainsaws constantly on Fitch Mountain now because one person started, then somebody else, it spreads. Green bins are full. People are doing the work that they need to. And I want to make sure that we get done here in time for some lunch because I bet you're all hungry.
Yeah,
Did you just talk to it very quickly about the challenges that come with Barbagello remission and in the lean time that could be required?
Yeah, so the question is property owner permission. The best case scenario is the community arranges it neighbor talking to neighbor, maybe through a COPE program, you agreed on it, right? As a community, it's in your Firewise plan or CPP. Neighbors talking to neighbors is what I found to be the best. There's a level of trust. Sometimes I'm able to go out there and talk to neighbors for you, but that's only because they know who Marshall is. Marshall's not a government figure. Marshall is the guy helping our community. So if you can get that with a government official, you might be able to get government to go out and broker deals for private property owners. But the biggest success is neighbors talking to neighbors for a variety of reasons, but that seems to be the biggest success. Okay, so that's why the COPE groups, Map Your Neighborhood, Firewise, whatever it is, that's where it's very easy for me to partner. And that's why Camp Meeker went down last year, was they all come together. I don't have to go out and try to track down 10 property owners. Makes it a lot easier. Real quick.
When you could approach that person and say, yeah, your neighbors on either side are doing it. We're waiting for you. You know, that makes a big difference too, that they know that there's other buy-in in the neighborhood. And then they're like, oh, okay, you know, if Joe's doing it, I'll do it too.
Well, so we're with buy-in. Can you explain that? Because my thought process is you might have, 5 people that agree, and then one in the middle says, no, I don't want to do that, or okay, maybe I want to do that. Should we get them to sign something? Or
yeah, we have consent
so you do
forms
have that.
we
Okay.
use. Yep.
Yeah, so that's tricky about, let's just say there's some holdouts, right? So depending on what level of environmental compliance we have to do for CEQA and NEPA, if they say, don't even come on my property, don't even look at my property, and we can't look at their property from a public space, they never can get jump on board later. If we at least include them for the CEQA compliance or the project design, we can bring them in later on implementation. So right now, people in the county's Sonoma's program opted out, like, don't come on my property. Well, now there's no way that grant can ever fund work on their property. So we try to encourage them to opt in, at least for the project design for CEQA compliance. You can always revoke your consent later for implementation. Let's just say we don't get 60% of the geographic area consent. We got to make a decision. Do we just do it anyway to demonstrate to the community, to maybe get others on board long term, or do we walk away from it? I tend to just, let's move forward and let's do it. And most of the time, that property owner is like, well, why aren't you doing free work on my property?
That's what happened a lot on Fitch Mountain.
Well, yeah.
Right. And then back to the insurance, because it always comes up, right? There's a lot of things happening, but what can we control? The more risk reduction we can do ahead of time, because either the bad fire never happens, or we demonstrate that, hey, let these people keep their insurance or keep their rates lower because they've reduced risk. So I've only been talking about how I can do it as government. You got to do defensible space. You got to harden your home. You got to do your part. But at a landscape level, project program level, this is how we can partner. Okay.
Great. Thank you all for listening. I'm so glad you're here.